Securities offered through Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through CWM, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Cetera Advisor Networks, LLC is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Carson Partners, a division of CWM, LLC, is a nationwide partnership of advisors. This is The Way to Wealth, with host Scott Ford, a jiu-jitsu fighting, woodworking, beekeeping entrepreneur who is also the managing director, partner, and wealth advisor of Carson Wealth. Financial freedom is the goal, and clarity and simplicity is how we'll get there. Let's get to it. This is Way to Wealth.
Hello, and welcome back to the Way to Wealth podcast, where we're all about making money simple, allowing you to live and to live fully now, not 30 years from today. Because you know what? Now it's kind of all we got. I am stoked this week to have Mr. Ben Greenfield on the podcast. I'm going to share a little bit about Ben's bio in case you don't know him. But if you don't, then you don't listen to podcasts, apparently. Before I do, let me just say welcome to the Way to Wealth podcast, Ben. Thanks for jumping on.
Well, thanks for having me on, Scott. Seems like every time we talk, we're chatting about all sorts of boring things about money, so it's going to be fun to actually, do a podcast and not have to talk about all those crappy business concepts you always seem to discuss, like wealth, and that, nobody cares about that, right?
So, audience, Ben Greenfield, again, if you're under a rock and don't listen to podcasts, human performance consultant, speaker, New York Times best-selling author of 13 books, which I did not know 13. Well done, Ben, including the widely popular titles Beyond Training, Boundless Fit Soul, Spiritual Disciplines. He was a triathlete, amazing athlete. I don't know anyone who knows more about the human body. What I'll end with that I think is probably most important is he resides in Spokane, Washington, which, by the way, says there's snow on the ground today, with his wife, Jessa, twin boys, River and Taryn, by the way, who my partner Rich met and said amazing human beings. And he enjoys worshiping God, praising Christ, swinging kettlebells, fixing guitar, ukulele, spearfishing, bow hunting, plant foraging, and cooking. So, welcome again to the podcast, Ben. And speaking of bow hunting, 'tis the season here. I've mentioned to you before we started, I was in the woods this morning for 4 hours. And venison, my wife and I go through about 4 or 5 a year. And I actually renamed it on my bio because of that mint cell. I love the wording called sacred bow hunting is what I renamed mine to. So
nice. Well, just a couple of quick things about that. I'm going to be sighting in my arrow gun later on today because I decided I want to go after the Thanksgiving turkey with a different kind of weapon, which is what it sounds like. It's a rifle that shoots arrows. So that's going to hopefully be filling the Thanksgiving table. Yeah, and then the venison piece. Do you have a smoker grill?
You know what? So I do. I've been a fan of a green egg for about 5 years, man. And so I feel pretty confident of the green egg, but I want to hear what you got. Yeah. And I know you use a Traeger as well.
Yeah, well, the smoker is great, obviously, for tenderizing any wild game that tends to have a little bit due to the lower fat content of a slightly tougher texture, but the thing I've been doing for the past year or so with some of the wild game, and I'm going to do this on Saturday with bear, is a sous vide. So like I'll put the bear in the sous vide. I just use a wand called the Jewel wand and add that to a pot with a bunch of hot water. It'll keep the temperature constant all day. You bag it with all the spices and marinades and everything, and then you just set it and forget it and walk away. So I'll do like a 12-hour sous vide on bear, venison, typically like 4 to 6 hours. And what happens is you get that nice, even texture that you get from a smoking process, but it's different. It's kind of it's a different flavor when you just marinate it in all of its goodness like that in a water bath. So that's kind of like the new hack for game meat, especially, is you try sous vide if you're already on the smoker bandwagon, if you want to try something new.
For the last 4 years, because I use the smoker, I'll do a turkey on the green egg and you get it to about 165. Then I'll take it smoked, which is probably 3 hours, maybe a little bit longer, depending on the size of the turkey. And I'll dip it and deep fry it. Woo! Everyone wants some more of that every year.
All right. Well, I smoked and I deep fried, but I haven't done the smoking plus a deep fried. So I'll try that out. And lest anyone's heart fall about your comment there about cardiovascular, obviously when you cook stuff in oils, it's not the greatest thing for your ticker. But the idea is that you can sop up some of that damage, and so there's two things that will actually repair the cells after they've had a lot of fried food exposure, and it's kind of flies under the radar. But one is spirulina, like the dark green powder, dark green supplement, and the other one is glycine, and either 5 grams of spirulina or 5 grams of glycine has been shown in research to be able to protect your cells after you've had fried food. So you can kind of have your turkey and eat it too.
So first question I wanted to pose to you, Ben, is there's a lot of things, there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of cool technology that's coming out. There's a lot of, lifetime extension stuff that's out there as far as longevity. My question is, what do you feel like has not changed? So in other words, I think it was Jeff Bezos that was asked at Amazon, look, 10 years from now, what's going to be new and what's going to be different? And he said, I think a better question is what's not going to change. People are going to want lots of options, lots of products and low prices. From the health industry and that standpoint, what do you think has not changed that we should be aware of and focus on?
Man, the first place my mind goes is if we want to see what hasn't changed, we can go back literally hundreds or thousands of years to the health practices that have remained staples in longevity hotspots and blue zones, and people where there are a high number of centenarians, people with a good combination of both lifespan and health span. And when you see all the trendy diets, keto and carnivore and vegan come and go, and all the trendy, workout protocols, whatever, elastic bands to marathoning to bodybuilding and beyond, the key principles that you see over and over again are, first of all, some type of management of blood sugar. Like, that it's just been a staple of any healthy program for all the time. And what I mean by that, and this has, of course, bled its way into modern technologies for controlling blood sugar and modern supplementation protocols, et cetera, is people will always need to engage in low-level physical activity during the day. Okay, so the idea of offices equipped with walking treadmills, under-desk ergometers, workout devices like pull-up bars from the door, portable exercise equipment, anything that enables people to move during the day, especially from an office or a workplace ergonomic standpoint, to simulate the type of ancestral hunter-gathering, foraging type of activities that our ancestors and primal humans would have done all day, is something that will always be a trend because it just works. We know humans were designed to move, so anything in health that allows people to move throughout their day, even in an era in which we're relegated to living in boxes, traveling in boxes and sleeping in boxes and working in boxes, is one thing that I think is always gonna remain. Another thing that we see in a lot of these areas is exposure to environmental stressors of heat and cold. There is a modern day resurgence of this concept of like cold baths, cold pools, infrared saunas, infrared lights, dry saunas, all sorts of different ways for people to increase body temperature or decrease body temperature. No matter what kind of exercise trends come and go, I think we will always see, again, because it works and it's something human beings have done for thousands of years, some type of implementation or way for people to get hot and to get cold. And that can be a modern ice bath. It could be, dumping ice into a bathtub. It can be a sauna. It can be, a sweatsuit like a wrestler might wear. But that's another variable that you see quite a bit is some type of environmental stressor. Another thing that I think will be a trend, again, related to blood sugar, is all sorts of ways to control blood sugar that, in ancestral times, it would have been the consumption of bitters and digestives and aperitifs and coffees and teas and things that people often gather around before a meal or prior to a meal. or even sometimes during or after a meal to control blood sugar. And so now we see all sorts of supplements like berberine and bitter melon and different type of fiber extracts and things that help people to control their blood sugar. Again, because we know that those things affect lifelong change as far as health goes. So whether it's supplements to control blood sugar, drinks to control blood sugar, or even ways to measure blood sugar. Like a lot of people now are wearing continuous blood glucose monitors, right? So we'll see a focus on glucose levels and sugar levels as a continued trend. And then, even though I could go on and on, I'm just going to name one more. We see that this whole idea of muscle-centric medicine, or muscle being the thing most heavily correlated from a fitness standpoint with longevity. Really, there's two things that are most correlated with longevity from an exercise standpoint. One is walking speed, and two is grip strength. So the walking speed, just correlates again to that low-level physical activity spread throughout the day. The second, the grip strength, is, of course, heavily correlated to the amount of strength training that you do. And so I don't think that weight training, no matter how many technologies come out for like exercise in a bottle or calf implants or electrical muscle stimulation or whatever, we're always going to see people needing ways to lift heavy objects and carry them around. And so, again, as annoying a place as it might be for many people to visit, the idea of fabricating a scenario in which people can be exposed to heavy objects who aren't able to farm or gather or forage or engage in manual labor, which is, all too common, becoming something that we see less and less in a working environment. We'll continue to see offerings for people to be able to engage in moving heavy items from point A to point B. So basically, low-level physical activity, blood sugar control and blood sugar management, stressors of heat and cold from a temperature regulation standpoint, and lifty, heavy things would all be examples of things that we've done ancestrally that we'll continue to seek going forward in the health sector.
On point, synthesized down. Thank you, and no doubt helpful to the audience listening. Speaking of heavy objects, it doesn't have to be expensive. I know I've lifted built some water charging stations with Paul Check back in the day, so you could just go lift heavy freaking rocks, which is a great workout. And I just got the one piece I didn't have with this puzzle bin. We have a pond out back that I'll get into. My wife thinks I've lost my mind, but I love it more than our pool. However, it's not always that convenient. So I finally got a cold plunge. I think that's the name of it, actually, is cold plunge this week or last week. I love that thing. I've had an infrared sauna. I got it set up with near lights not long ago. And anyway, that combo is just like, wow, does that help your psyche? And no doubt good for the vascular system as well, getting in the plunge, huh?
It's my favorite way to start just about every day is 25 to 40 minutes of, I use a full spectrum infrared sauna, get a deep sweat in, go hit the cold plunge for 2 to 5 minutes. And man, the dopamine release you get, the full body health effect without necessarily doing a hard exercise session in the morning, and kind of like the peace that it seems to bring to the rest of the day is unparalleled. So yeah, I think anybody who doesn't have some type of a hot cold practice in their routine, who's seeking better health and lifespan, should really look into that type of practice.
I love it. So since I have you, I'm going to get down the rabbit hole a little bit. So bear with me, audience. That is on the sauna. So you said the full spectrum. So the question I have here is, what's the EMF exposure and or risk? Because what I heard from Mercola and others is I have a sunlight, I believe, full infrared, so near, mid, far. And the complaint was the high EMF radiation. And so I have one of those things that measure it. I don't remember what it was, but it seemed high. So I turn it on, let it ramp up for 30 minutes, and it only gets to about 145, let's call it. And then I got these 4 lights that are near infrared only, turn those on for 15. That gets it to about 150. Turn off the sauna before I get in. It stays at 150. So I'm getting the heat, sweating profusely, and I get the near infrared only with those lights. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's 2 times in your life when you want to be most cognizant of protecting the cells from non-native electricity and dirty electricity. And that would be A, while you are sleeping, which is during the time when the central nervous system is supposed to be repairing and recovering. So even if you're bombarded by Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and cell phone towers and radio frequencies all day long, the more you can protect your bedroom, the better, meaning everything from dirty electricity filters to, you can sleep inside a Faraday canopy to just unplugging everything in the bedroom. But basically the bedroom should be a quiet, electricity-free cage as much as you can do that. The other area in life to protect yourself from dirty EMF is when the tissues are hot, right? That's why you're not supposed to hold your cell phone up to your head, because it heats all your brain tissue. Well, obviously in a sauna, the tissue is hot, and that makes it more susceptible to the damaging effects of EMF and ELF. And so the idea is that, you want to preferably choose some type of a sauna, and the Sunlight would fit into this category, as would another brand called the Clear Light. You want to choose something that has low levels of EMF and ELF, and then you want to make sure that you don't have devices in there like Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cell phones, etc., turned on. Now, there are some concerns in the health sector about even these saunas that advertise themselves as low EMF or low ELF as not actually being so. But I can tell you, I had a building biologist come over with all his fancy measuring tools, and we measured my electrical exposure inside an infrared sauna, turned on, fully operating, and it was very low. But I'll tell you what we did find. We found that coming in through the windows and the walls in the room in which that sauna was placed was a whole bunch of frequencies from cell phone towers and radio waves coming in from other sources. And so what we did was we just used a very simple paint on the outside of the walls, a Faraday paint, and just painted the wall to make sure that it was blocking some of those effects from coming in. But the sauna itself wasn't an issue. You just need to make sure when you shop, you get a good brand, again, like the Sunlight or the Sauna Space or the Clear Light, to really lower the amount of EMF you get exposed to.
Cool. That's helpful. Thank you. One more question on that. You mentioned the bedroom space. So that mattress, the Essentia, looks amazing. It has a topper, right, which is a lot less expensive than getting a whole new mattress. Is that sufficient, you think, as far as, because I think it has EMF protection on just that topper piece to put on an existing bed?
Yeah, that works fine. The Essentia mattress, if you didn't want to spring, pun intended, for a full mattress setup with low EMF or EMF blocking technology, that's a company that also makes a topper that can achieve a very, very similar effect. And then again, if you want to go just like full on, all guns blazing, you can actually get what's called a Faraday canopy. You can like, if you have a poster bed, you can just hang it around the bed, and man, when you climb in that, you just feel like you're shut off from the world. Inside comes some kind of like a sensory deprivation chamber. My wife doesn't think it's very romantic, but you know what? If I really got to score some points and get it on that night, I can always pull the Faraday canopy up, and she's happy. So
I was laughing because that's exactly what was going through my mind. I made note and circled one thing on our conversation. It was Faraday canopy, and I'm thinking my wife is going to shoot me. What is new on this spectrum? What are you up to? What's new that you're excited about?
Trends come and go. CBD would have been like 10 years ago, and keto was like 8 years ago. And now we've got like carnivore coming in from a nutritional standpoint. And I think that a few of the things that seem to be kind of taking the health world by storm of late that I keep my eye on, one would be this idea of shifting the body into a state of really efficient fat burning and blood glucose stabilization via the use of ketone esters, which are molecules that are the same type of things your body would churn out after a long period of fasting or significant carbohydrate restriction, but you can actually consume those orally and get a lot of the same effects as far as a super clean burning, appetite satiating fuel for the brain and the liver and the heart and the diaphragm. And so now there are companies like HVMN or Ketone Aid making drinkable ketone esters. Ketone Aid is making nighttime cocktail replacements like gin and tonics and Moscow mules and champagnes, using, instead of alcohol, ketone esters. And because they work so well, and they also have such a broad variety of health effects, I think one trend that's going to continue and even overshadow a lot of the focus on the ketogenic diet is just basically being able to drink yourself into a state of ketosis. So that's a big nutrition trend that I think is really getting popular. A second nutrition or supplementation trend is the use of nootropics. A lot of people who have traditionally used Adderall or caffeine or modafinil or other synthetics or pharmaceuticals for cognitive enhancement are now realizing that there's a lot of cool, more natural compounds that can literally be like a cheat code on life, almost like the limitless pill from that old Bradley Cooper film, where you can get by. Like, for example, I sleep these days about 6 to 6.5 hours a night, which doesn't seem like much, but I get up in the morning and I'll take a nootropic and be able to just crush the entire morning. I slip away for a quick 20 to 30 minute siesta after lunch, and I function great. My health is great. My heart rate variability is great. My blood glucose is great. All the things you expect to go to pot on a low night of sleep operates just fine with that combination of a shorter night of sleep, a nootropic in the morning, and then a quick post-lunch siesta or meditation session. When you do the math, basically I'm giving myself about 7 extra hours of productivity a week by doing that, because it's, it all comes out to about 1 hour less of sleeping per night. Once you add in that nap after lunch, if I'm sleeping 6.5 hours, then, slip it in for a half hour after lunch, that's 7 total hours instead of 8. Now, I think that although there's a huge number of different compounds out there for nootropics, a few of the more compelling ones to keep an eye on, if I could name 3, would be one company called Nootopia, Nootopia, that has some really, really great formulations. You go online, you take a neurotransmitter test to see what type of neurotransmitters your body specifically needs. You get a box, it's about a $400 box once a month that just has everything you need for long-term cognitive enhancement. The second company would be a slightly less expensive, but kind of like just a cocktail of well-researched brain foods. That's a company called Qualia, and they do a product called Qualia Mind, which is another fantastic kind of like done-for-you nootropic that covers a ton of bases, and it's like 40 different compounds all in one bottle. And then the last one, and this one is going to take the world by storm based on the results that people are getting from it. I think I'm even considering investing in one company that's starting to put it in their energy drinks. It's called paraxanthine, Paraxanthine. The movie Limitless was inspired by a pharmaceutical drug called modafinil. It's an off-label narcoleptic drug to keep people from going to sleep during the day. But the problem with modafinil is it lasts for like 24 hours. When you take it, you're not going to be sleeping that night. Paraxanthine gives you all the same effect, plus this like mild euphoric high, but only lasts for about 4 to 6 hours. So it's like perfect if you, let's say you're up at, 4 a.m. and you just want to crush the day until noon, you take a little bit of that and you're off to the races, and it's a super clean energy without any side effects. So from a supplementation standpoint, I'd say ketones and nootropics. And then I would say, in addition to the things that we already listed that are kind of like emerging and being built upon, based on ancestral practices like heat and cold, I think another one, is even though people are always going to need to lift heavy things, I think a quick hack for muscle growth, and there's one company in the space that has absolutely taken off. Their valuation has gone through the roof, is a Catalyst, spelled the K. And Catalyst makes a full body electrical muscle stimulation suit that you put on, you wear for about 20 minutes. A trainer on an iPad screen walks you through a workout, and you finish 20 minutes of electrical muscle stimulation, and you feel like you've literally been crushing the weights at the gym for about 3 hours. Like you don't even want to lift weights for several days after you use that thing because it's so effective. But I mean, considering you can throw it in your luggage and just like, travel anywhere, pull on the suit and get this full body workout, even if you don't have access to heavy weights, I think that's a really, really cool trend. This idea of using electrical muscle stimulation as kind of like a cheat code for getting the muscle that you normally need to get from lifting heavy weights. And don't get me wrong, like you still want to subject your body to heavy loads for bone density and things like that. But electrical muscle stimulation is a really, really, really cool and exciting new technology, I think,
By the way, I have that catalyst, and it is legit, right? You're like, what is this? And then you do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, I had sore muscles in areas that I forgot I had muscles, because it's like stimulating stuff you're not used to working, even when you're doing full body workouts every week.
And I think kind of related to the workout concept, the last thing I'd mention is this idea of using resistance motors to do what normally like a spotter or a personal trainer or an exercise partner would be able to do for you in the gym. So you can get fit very quickly and do like, one single set to failure. And again, I'm all about time hacks, because, time is money, time is freedom. So if I can get away with a 20-minute workout rather than an hour workout, I'll take that 10 times out of 10. So I would say 2 companies in the space that are doing a really good job on that is one, the Tonal, which is a wall-mounted device with 2 cables, very small footprint, and it has the ability to be able to push and pull you in different directions. So rather than just lifting weights, the machine's actually kind of like intelligently altering the resistance. And so when you do like, a pull down, it's pulling you back up with the same amount of force. And so that can be incredibly effective at compressing the amount of time that you got to spend in the gym. My only complaint about that one is it does need a Wi-Fi connection to operate properly. I contacted the company. I'm trying to convince them to install an Ethernet port in the back. So back to the EMF piece, you really don't have to get exposed to as much Wi-Fi when you're using it. But the other one that's, and this is pretty much the majority of my weightlifting nowadays. It's called an ARX machine. It's a 25 horsepower engine that basically is like fighting a giant robot for about 15 to 20 minutes. And I think I'm stronger than I've ever been in my life. And I'm 40 years old, and I'm doing 3 20-minute strength training sessions a week on that thing. And, when I travel, I'll still hit hotel gyms and things like that. But at home, like literally like an hour a week of strength training, and I'm strong like a bull, because this thing just nobody's stronger than 25 horses. So it'll do, I go in, I do a squat, deadlift, chest press, pull down, shoulder press, and row, and it's just boom, done. It's more expensive than the Tonal, but that thing, I will work out on that for the rest of my life. I guarantee till I'm 90 years old, just because I could stay so strong in such a short period of time.
I'm going to check that out, Ben, because like that's what I do. I do hit high intensity. So Doug McGuff, Drew, Steve Maxwell, those guys, right? And I love it because, and I'm actually down to 2 a week, and it's 20 minutes. And I will say, done right, it's freaking miserable, meaning it is a hard 20 minutes, but you're only doing it once or twice a week. And like, I'm 50 and I am stronger than I've ever been. So it absolutely works, and it's like efficiency in the gym. So I'm not familiar with that ARC. Is it AR? Did you say ARX machine?
ARX. Yeah. Yeah. I've got one in my gym now, and it's, as you know, I'm moving to Idaho next year, and that's definitely a piece of equipment that will go along with me for sure.
Beautiful. What would you say, Ben, as far as just life, business, otherwise? What are you excited about? What's going on personally, professionally that you're excited about?
Gosh, like for you, I'll be preaching to the choir. This might be new to the audience, but just the whole idea of legacy and just structuring your life, particularly your family life, in a real, if you look at it from a biblical standpoint, like an Abrahamic way, like not just thinking about you and your generation, but the families that are to come after you, and integrating concepts within the way that you structure your family routines and rituals, such that you're building out like an entire playbook for your family. You and I have a mutual friend named Rich Christensen, and he was a business branding expert and now brands families. And so we've worked with them as a Greenfield family. We have a whole playbook that dictates everything from our morning rituals, our afternoon rituals, our evening rituals, our family logo, our family crest, our family mission statement, our family values, all the way down to what we do with the kids at certain ages. And so it's like a playbook that I'll be able to hand to my sons when they get married, to continue to build upon and ensure that each generation becomes successively wealthier, not just from a financial standpoint, but from a value standpoint, from an impact standpoint. And I mean, of all the things I've done in the past couple of years, as far as meaning and purpose in life are concerned, it's that. I mean, when I wake up in the morning and I have the family crest hanging above the fireplace that we're doing our family meditations under, and every family member has a purpose statement for their life and their own power animal and their own color. And the Greenfield family logo is on the flags outside the front door when you walk in, like an old castle. And, the logos on everything from our pepper grinders to our coasters, to our throw pillows, to our hoodies, to our shirts. I mean, it makes sense conceptually to people, but there are certain things that occur mentally and psychologically when you all of a sudden are considering this idea that you're building generations upon generations to come after you that are going to grow up to make this world a better place, not only in terms of what you do with your wealth, how you structure your trust, the way that you pass money on to your children, the values that you teach them, but even for me, well, I'll give you, not to get too nitty gritty with folks, but, I travel a lot, Scott. I'm on the road and I'm speaking at conferences and I'm the big dog. And, guess what happens? Women come up to you, and you get tempted by the type of things that a man would find very attractive. I tell you what, like I have zero desire to let's say like cheat on my wife or to be tempted by another woman, because I know like that trading that short-term pleasure for the long-term legacy that's right in front of my face every time I'm in the house is not something that I do in a million years. It's almost this idea of like built-in fidelity in terms of making decisions that I know are going to be long-term decisions that make my family better and that impact the world more meaningfully. Another example would be when I walk into my office and I see the Greenfield family logo and the mission statement and the values, and I'm walking past that crest on the way to my office. The priorities that I choose to focus upon during the workday are all long-term, right? Like I'm making instead of managing, I'm creating instead of consuming. I'm focusing on projects that I know will be perennial bestsellers, books and programs and courses that I want to exist even after I'm gone, including even books written for my children and my children's children. And so this idea of generational legacy and avoiding that whole rags to riches to rags phenomenon, and instead ensuring that every single generation after you becomes more impactful and wealthier across a wide variety of arenas is probably the thing I'm most excited about as far as something I've implemented over the past few years that if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have had no clue what you're talking about. But now I'm like, dude, every family needs to implement this type of thing.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. I wasn't anticipating that. And in full disclosure, first of all, Rich is an amazing human being. He's probably my closest friend. He's a soul brother and business partner. We're partners in Legato family. He created this amazing framework that he first lived, and now he feels he got a message to share this with the world. So he is, and for whatever reason, felt like I had the structure to bring to it. So that's what I bring. Seventh generation, we just create this and put it in a framework of how do you create the proper trust? How do you put it in a framework where it makes sense in English? It's the preamble to the trust. And it also then coincides with how do you leave money as a tool instead of entitlement, but as opportunities tied to this amazing framework.
I realize you're biased, but like I'm speaking in full authenticity. You could have been totally random person aside from Scott Ford asked me that question. And, I know you're more involved with Rich than the average person might be, but, I just speaking from my heart, it really, truly is. I'm not just blowing smoke. Like one of the most important things I've done for my family and myself ever.
Anything else that I didn't ask you that you would like to share that's on your heart and or mind, or that you think the audience would benefit from during our current times?
Sure. Just to build upon the concept of health. And here's what a lot of, men's health and women's health magazines and the average trainer and nutritionist won't tell you is every single one of you out there listening, you are a battery. Your body is electric, and you must ensure that, similar to driving a fine Tesla, ensuring it's charged up during the day, you are keeping that battery charged. The way that you keep that battery charged is by exposing yourself to ample amounts of sunlight, because photons from light, including the type of infrared lights that we talked about in a sauna, those excite the cells. They keep that voltage turned on. Number two is get outside barefoot or be in touch with the surface of the planet for at least 20 minutes a day, because the planet emits a natural magnetic field that, again, charges up your battery. And Some people will exercise and they'll eat healthy, but they'll still feel kind of blah. In many cases, it's because they're not in constant contact with the sun and not in constant contact with the surface of this planet. Two practices that primal humans were designed to incorporate in their lifestyles that we've lost touch with these days. And then the final thing is, remember that anybody who's taken chemistry knows this: electricity and voltage requires electrically charged particles. And so frequent use, this has been a game changer for me, by the way. I started it during my final 2 years of Ironman triathlon, and it's just been something that stuck with me ever since. Just basically using minerals all day long, really good salts, really good trace liquid minerals, salting foods, drinking low sugar electrolyte type of compounds, along with good, clean, pure filtered water. In many cases, people get hungry, they get food cravings, they get grumpy, they get low blood pressure, etc. And it's because they don't realize how important it is to not just drink pure, clean, filtered water, but to combine that water with really, really good electrolyte and mineral sources. And then once you throw contact with the earth and contact with the sun into the mix, you all of a sudden have a charged up battery. And there are books like Healing is Voltage by Jerry Tennant or The Body Electric by Robert Becker. But the one thing I wish more people knew about was this concept of the body being a battery and the necessity to maintain the voltage of that battery. And if you do that, man, it's a game changer.
People wanting to learn more, you have so much stuff out there. Clearly, any of your books are I'm sure available on Amazon. And probably the best way to just follow up is going straight to bengreenfieldlife.com for your podcast, for your blogs. You put out a ton of amazing content. So bengreenfieldlife.com. I'll put in show notes everything we talked about. Ben shared a ton of knowledge and wisdom. We'll make sure and link it up in the show notes. Thanks for what you do, the work you put out to the world, taking time to be on our podcast to share with my tribe. And I look forward to hopefully doing this again at some point. But thanks for being on the podcast, Ben Greenfield.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, right on. We'll be in touch. And audience, we'll catch you again next week on The Way to Wealth, where we're all about making money simple so that you can fully live life, and you can do it now, not 30 years from today. Catch you all next week.
The opinions voiced in Way to Wealth with Scott Ford, Managing Director, Partner, and Wealth Advisor of Carson Wealth, are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial, or tax advisor prior to investing. Guests on Way to Wealth are not affiliated with CWM LLC or Cetera Advisor Networks LLC. Legato Family is not affiliated with Cetera Advisor Networks LLC or CWM LLC. Carson Wealth, 19833 Leitersburg Pike, Suite 1, Hagerstown, Maryland, 21742.